When it comes to military dominance at sea, few images strike more fear into the hearts of rivals than the silhouette of a massive US battleship cutting through the waves. For North Korea, a nation that thrives on defiance and secrecy, the presence of such a floating fortress represents something far more terrifying than just steel and firepower. It's the embodiment of American resolve, global influence, and overwhelming naval superiority. But why does North Korea, a state that constantly projects bravado, secretly tremble at the mention of these war machines? Battleships are not just relics of World War II, they are symbols of absolute power, intimidation, and near impossible defense for weaker adversaries. The United States has maintained and modernized its naval arsenal to the point where these vessels act as guardians of global trade, protectors of allies, and, most importantly, instruments of raw intimidation. To Pyongyang, this isn't just about weapons, it's about survival. In this video, we're diving deep into the fascinating truth behind North Korea's greatest naval fear. We'll uncover why US battleships have become nightmares for the Hermit Kingdom, the history of their encounters, and how these giants continue to shape the balance of power. In one of the world's most volatile regions, the battleship is not merely a warship. It is a declaration of dominance. From the colossal Iowa-class battleships, bristling with massive 16-inch guns, to modernized warships reinforced with advanced defense systems, the United States has always used its Navy as the front line of deterrence. North Korea, with its limited naval resources, sees these vessels as an insurmountable challenge. During the Cold War, when the Korean Peninsula became a flashpoint between East and West, US battleships were frequently deployed to demonstrate America's readiness. For North Korea, each deployment wasn't just a military exercise, it was a reminder that even the slightest provocation could summon the wrath of a behemoth capable of obliterating coastal defenses. Within hours, the very presence of such ships near the Korean Peninsula turns the strategic tide. They represent mobile fortresses, self-sustaining, heavily armed, and able to stay at sea indefinitely. For Pyongyang, which relies on propaganda and intimidation rather than military parity, this technological and psychological mismatch creates genuine terror. The fear that North Korea harbors is rooted in history. The US Navy's track record during World War II and the Korean War cemented the battleship as a nightmare for any adversary. The USS Missouri, a BB-63, for example, not only fought in the Pacific, but also served as the stage for Japan's surrender in 1945 forever, tying American battleships to the concept of decisive victory. When the Korean War erupted in 1950, US battleships like the Missouri returned to action, bombarding coastal positions and cutting off North Korean supply routes. The devastating firepower of their guns flattened defenses that North Korea thought were impenetrable. For the Kim regime, which values its image of invincibility, this humiliation was impossible to forget. Even decades later, the stories of these bombardments circulate within North Korea's military hierarchy. The regime may publicly boast about its missile tests and nuclear program, but behind closed doors, it knows that a single US battleship could dismantle entire divisions with relentless precision and unstoppable firepower. The fear of US battleships extends far beyond the battlefield. These ships are instruments of psychological warfare. Their arrival near Korean waters sends a message louder than any diplomatic statement. The US is ready, willing, and capable of crushing aggression instantly. Pyongyang interprets this as not just military intimidation, but as a public demonstration of their weakness. In authoritarian regimes like North Korea, perception is everything. The Kim dynasty thrives on the illusion of control and strength. But when the people or even the military elite witness the overwhelming superiority of a US battleship, cracks begin to form in that narrative. The very idea of these vessels roaming nearby is a blow to the regime's propaganda. Unlike aircraft carriers, which project air power, battleships carry a brutal, old-world symbolism, unstoppable guns, thick armor, and raw destructive force. They embody a kind of warfare that North Korea cannot match with its limited fleet of aging frigates and patrol boats. For Pyongyang, this imbalance creates not just strategic problems, but deep-seated psychological ones. North Korea's navy is often portrayed as outdated, with a fleet consisting largely of Cold War-era submarines, patrol craft, and aging frigates. In contrast, US battleships, despite their age, have been modernized with advanced radar, missile defenses, and electronic warfare systems. This technological gap is one of the greatest reasons behind Pyongyang's fear. Imagine North Korea attempting to challenge a US battleship at sea. Their anti-ship missiles would struggle against the ship's layered defense systems. Their air support, limited and vulnerable, would be cut down before even reaching striking distance. Their submarines, though numerous, lack the stealth and sophistication required to penetrate American defenses. This overwhelming mismatch means that in any confrontation, North Korea's forces will be decimated. The battleship doesn't just represent an opponent, it represents futility. No amount of propaganda can change the hard truth that the US Navy operates decades ahead of North Korea in every meaning. For metric of naval warfare, the Pacific Ocean is more than just water, it's a theater of power. US battleships and naval groups ensure that America can project force anywhere in the region, from Japan to South Korea and beyond. For North Korea, this makes the Korean Peninsula a vulnerable chess piece in a larger game. Every time a US battleship is deployed to the Pacific, it alters the strategic balance. North Korea, which often rattles its saber through missile launches or naval skirmishes, finds itself immediately overshadowed. These deployments neutralize Pyongyang's threats without even firing a shot, proving that US naval power isn't just reactive, it's preemptive. The Pacific's importance also lies in its alliances. South Korea, Japan, and other regional partners rely on the assurance that US battleships can respond quickly to aggression for North Korea. This creates an impossible dilemma. Any attempt to destabilize the region risks immediate and devastating retaliation. For Pyongyang, the mere presence of a US battleship in nearby waters isn't just a military problem, it's an economic one. Maintaining a state of readiness drains North Korea's limited resources. Fuel, manpower, and logistics are all stretched thin whenever these giants loom off their coasts. North Korea's fragile economy cannot sustain long-term military mobilization. Every exercise, every alert, and every precaution in response to US naval deployments costs the regime valuable resources. This creates a hidden pressure point. The battleship becomes an economic weapon, as much as a military one, unlike the US, which has a vast military-industrial complex to support prolonged deployments. North Korea is forced to sacrifice civilian needs for military paranoia. This imbalance ensures that over time, the mere shadow of an American battleship becomes a financial nightmare for the regime. For decades, North Korea has tried to portray itself as a military power capable of standing toe-to-toe with global giants. Yet the glaring weakness of its navy exposes this narrative as hollow. US battleships amplify this inferiority complex by highlighting the vast gulf between Pyongyang's ambition and its reality. North Korea's largest vessels pale in comparison. To American battleships, their firepower is minuscule, their armor thin, and their technology outdated. Each naval parade Pyongyang stages is undermined by the unspoken truth that none of its ships could survive a single salvo from a US battleship. This inferiority complex isn't just military, it's political. The Kim regime relies on naval bravado to project strength to its people. but behind closed doors. Even North Korea's top generals know the truth. Their navy exists more as a symbol than as a functional fighting force. The US doesn't deploy battleships just for show, they are tools of deterrence. By stationing one near the Korean peninsula, Washington sends a clear message. Any escalation will be met with overwhelming force. This deterrence works not because North Korea doubts America's resolve, but because they understand the sheer capability of these ships. Pyongyang often thrives on brinkmanship, testing nuclear weapons, launching missiles, and provoking skirmishes. But battleships disrupt this strategy. They limit North Korea's options by raising the stakes of miscalculation. A single mistake could trigger a devastating response that North Korea cannot hope to withstand. This deterrence role makes battleships uniquely terrifying for Pyongyang, unlike aircraft carriers, which focus on air superiority. Battleships bring immediate, direct firepower to the fight. They leave no room for bluster-only consequences. The scars of the Korean War remain fresh in North Korea's memory. Battleships like the USS Missouri and USS New Jersey played pivotal roles in devastating bombardments that crippled North Korean defenses. Entire coastal cities were reduced to rubble, and supply lines were severed with ruthless precision. These memories have been passed down through generations of military leaders, even if North Korea's propaganda machine avoids admitting it. Internally, the regime knows that history could repeat itself. The fear isn't just about the ships, it's about the reminder that they have already suffered humiliating defeat at their hands. The Korean War wasn't just a military clash, it was a psychological scar. Battleships became symbols of unstoppable American power. And that legacy continues to haunt North Korea's strategic planning today. While many believe battleships are relics of the past, the US has ensured that these vessels remain formidable. Modern upgrades have equipped them with advanced targeting systems, cruise missiles, and electronic warfare capabilities. This hybrid of old-world armor and modern technology creates an unmatched threat profile for North Korea, which struggles to maintain even basic military hardware. The idea of facing a modernized US battleship is terrifying. Their outdated missiles and torpedoes would stand little chance against such layered defenses. In short, battleships represent an opponent they cannot kill. This blend of history, symbolism, and modern lethality ensures that battleships remain nightmares for Pyongyang. They aren't just floating museums, they're cutting-edge war machines, capable of rewriting the outcome of any confrontation. North Korea isn't the only one watching when US battleships move into position. China, Russia, and other potential adversaries observe closely. The deployment of such ships sends a global message. The United States remains the undisputed naval superpower for North Korea. This message is doubly painful. Not only does it remind them of their own weakness, but it also highlights their isolation. Even allies like China are reluctant to openly challenge American battleships, leaving Pyongyang without meaningful support in a naval conflict. This global demonstration of power ensures that battleships remain more than just weapons. They are floating ambassadors of American strength. And for North Korea, every sighting is a reminder that they stand alone against a force far greater than themselves. At the core of North Korea's fear is one undeniable truth. A US battleship has the power to annihilate their coastal defenses, cripple their navy, and devastate their infrastructure within days. For a regime built on survival, this is the ultimate nightmare. Pyongyang can boast about missiles, parade its troops, and claim nuclear strength, but it knows that against the relentless firepower of a battleship, all of these displays crumble into dust. The regime's fear isn't irrational, it's based on cold, hard reality. And that's why North Korea fears US battleships more than anything. They represent the embodiment of American power, the shadow of history, and the unavoidable reminder that in the face of true military might, Pyongyang's threats are nothing more than whispers against a storm.